If discipline actually worked the way we're told it does, ambitious women would be the most consistent people on the planet. But we're not. And it's not a personal failure. It's because discipline breaks down at a certain level, but we never talk about why. Most advice on discipline assumes that your brain and nervous system are neutral. And when you go to take action towards something, you're doing so from a neutral state. But typically, when we have ambition, we're not just working towards something, we're working towards something we want. And that thing we want carries an emotional charge and has personal meaning to us, which actually changes the state of our nervous system, our brain, and how they process information. While it may be easy to assume that discipline is the only way you can conquer whatever it is you're working towards, typically the actions you need to take carry an emotional charge, and discipline is not enough to overcome it, especially once you get close. This process that I'm talking about is essentially the process of self sabotage, and it's how your brain and nervous system keep you safe when they believe that something you are working towards is actually a danger to your mental, emotional, or physical health. And if you're someone who has a lot of ambition and a lot of things you want to do, this can be one of the most frustrating conundrums of all. So we're going to break down what self sabotage is, why it hits ambitious women in a different way than others, and how you can actually fix it so you can stay consistent and accomplish even the most unrealistic of goals. First things first, we need to understand the roots of self-sabotage as it applies to basically everybody. One of the biggest misconceptions is that self-sabotage is just a lack of discipline, when in actuality, self-sabotage is a fear response evoked by the mind and body when we're working towards something that makes us feel a little unsafe. The sense of safety being triggered typically isn't our physical safety, instead, it's our mental and emotional safety, and more specifically, it's typically our sense of self-worth. In order to understand where this response comes from, we need to understand how we learn to do basically anything that's automatic. When we are younger, specifically around the ages from 0 to 8 years old, our brain is actually firing at a lower frequency and is acting like a sponge to basically every experience that's going on around you. It's similar to being in a constant state of hypnosis where anything that happens to you is held onto a little bit more closely because your brain and body need some information and data to go off of when it comes to making decisions. When something happens in this period of time that causes you to have an emotion or an emotional response that is more negative and you do not feel safe to fully experience or process that emotion in the moment, it's almost as if your body creates a clog in its pipes. Instead of letting that emotion pass, that emotion is frozen inside of you and becomes the trigger to any future experiences that happen. Your brain and body essentially mark whatever happened right before that experience as something negative or dangerous or unsafe, and those become the fears and the triggers that you experience later on in your life. While the fears are the easiest parts to identify from these experiences, the real harm that they do is teaching us that we are not worthy or valuable as we are. Most of these moments where our fears are learned and our triggers start are particularly painful and still held on to this day because something in that experience and that moment taught us that we are not worthy and enough as we are. This is why our lack of self-worth ties so closely to anything that we are self-sabotaging. 9 times out of 10, the reason we're self-sabotaging is because we are afraid something in that goal or the action we need to take to get there is going to make us feel worse about ourselves and less valuable as we are. And while that is the root of the problem, our fears act as a bridge to our self-worth. We may fear something reflecting back to us that we are not enough, but we'll identify it as a fear of failing or a fear of being judged or rejected. And while this is how self-sabotage works, whether we are ambitious or not, those of us who do have more drive and more discipline are going to be able to override some of those fear responses and the resistance that they create in the beginning stages. However, as we get closer to the actual goal itself and being able to accomplish it, the level of resistance grows. And that's why it's so difficult to maintain consistency all the way till the end. Now, I know from experience that when you're an ambitious person, sometimes even towards the end, when the resistance is high and something about it just doesn't feel right, you still have the power to override that response inside of you and use your discipline to keep showing up. But the thing that I never realized that was probably one of the biggest hindrances of all is that the closer we get to actually accomplishing the goal, the more our brain and nervous system will try to sabotage us in even subtler ways because they don't feel safe in us actually succeeding. These more nuanced ways of self-sabotage might not look like your traditional procrastination. Instead, it's going to be brain fog, a lack of creativity, or you just not feeling very clear when it comes to making decisions or understanding the direction you're going in. From my experience, these more subtle forms of self-sabotage can be even more destructive because you don't really realize they're happening because you're still showing up, you're still taking action, you just aren't making decisions strategically or in ways that are actually going to get you closer to where you want to go. This is why the end of any big accomplishment can often feel like a grind if you haven't created a sense of safety in your mind and your nervous system first. And because the resistance only gets larger the closer we get, it's also why even the most ambitious and disciplined of us can't always follow through to the end. Now, obviously, this isn't ideal, so how do we fix it? If we create a sense of safety around the goal we are working towards and the actions we need to take to get there, the resistance itself will actually decrease and it'll allow us to take action more effortlessly and show up like we normally would for any other thing we're trying to accomplish. The key to creating this type of experience and response isn't in just disciplining ourselves more, it's in creating that sense of safety on the mind and nervous system level so that our body truly feels safe when we are taking those actions. Our thinking is clear and in line with what we actually want to do, and the actions that we are actually taking are actually productive in getting us there in the quickest way possible. In order to create that safety, we have to address it on both the mind and the nervous system level. What most people don't realize is that our nervous system is oftentimes responding to things before our mind has even processed them, which means that when we have a pattern that's deeper or more ingrained, like most of the patterns that are actually causing us to sabotage to this level, simple mindset work and affirmations aren't going to do the trick. A lot of us are familiar with the term neuroplasticity, which is the ability for our brain to generate new connections and new neural pathways so that we will have new automatic behaviors. While this is incredibly powerful, if our nervous system is responding to something before our mind is even processing it, it does not matter how strong our new neural pathways are, our body still is going to feel unsafe and it's going to trigger us back into old pathways and old patterns. This is why I typically recommend focusing on creating a sense of safety in our body and our nervous system before we focus on the mindset work alone. Remember the clogged pipes I was talking about at the beginning of this video? Those clogged pipes are actually the key to creating a sense of safety inside of ourselves. When we experience an emotion typically comes into our body, we feel it, process it, and then it leaves. But when we have clogged pipes, an emotion has essentially come into our body and we haven't been able to fully process it. So it freezes inside of us and becomes the trigger that we are now experiencing today. If we can unfreeze that emotion, process it, and allow it to leave our body, we can clear our pipes, which makes it so much easier for us to develop a sense of safety when it comes to the actual goal we're working towards. Now, if you're anything like me, the biggest problem to all of this isn't can I do it or can't I? It's I don't even know where these instances, experiences, or triggers even started. And the best part of this is that you don't actually need to know. Our body is so much smarter and more intelligent than we give it credit for. And oftentimes, if our body is put in the correct state, it can actually heal itself without us consciously understanding or being aware of anything that's happening inside of us. Your body wants you to thrive and it wants you to succeed, which is why it does things like fight off illness, even when you're not consciously telling it to fix it. But the hardest part for most of us who are ambitious and driven and want to keep showing up is mostly knowing exactly what to do and how to do it in order to put the time and energy in to get there. From my experience, breathwork has been one of the most pivotal tools when it comes to healing my self-sabotage. Most people think of breathwork as just something to do to calm their nervous system, when in actuality, breathwork accesses both the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. Our parasympathetic nervous system is associated with more calming activities, it's the rest and digest, whereas our sympathetic nervous system is associated with our stress responses. You would think the stress response is the absolute opposite of what we want to access right now, but when we can control our access to that stress response and put ourselves in a stress state with the right inputs and right techniques, we can actually put our body in a self-healing state so it can go back, access those past frozen emotional wounds and clogged pipes, heal them, release them, and allow us to then move forward in the parasympathetic state and take action without being triggered. Now, this is just one of many very helpful tools when it comes to healing self-sabotage, but I highly recommend, if you haven't tried it yet, you open yourself up to that experience. The real thing for you to remember here is that in order for you to heal your self-sabotage and feel safe taking action towards your goals, you need to be able to identify the instances in your life that taught you to be afraid and feel unsafe with whatever it is you're working towards. You need to be able to heal those instances through processing the emotions that are stuck inside of you. And then you need to be able to rewire your mind and body to feel safe and worthy in actually working towards those goals. If you want to go into more depth on any of these things, there are 2 masterclasses linked in the show notes. One for healing self-sabotage and the other for building self-worth. These masterclasses are designed to work in tandem with each other and have associated healing tracks and breathwork tracks so you can experience the type of breathwork I'm talking about and see how it impacts you. Both of these masterclasses have step-by-step, tangible exercises that I have used and hundreds of clients have also used in order to heal their self-sabotage, and they contain plenty of examples and resources so you can do it on your own. And if you're sitting there wondering, how do I even build my self-worth? Well, that is a question for another video. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.